Namaskar and welcome to the Gandhi Katha hosted by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre, Consulate General of India in Durban during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, whose contribution in making Mohan into the Mahatma is unparalleled. I pay my humble obeisance to the Matru Shakti, comprising of 50% of the population of us women the world over. And we, the Gandhijas, are celebrating this as Ba Bapu 150. I am grateful to the Consul General Sri Anish Ranjanji and Sri C.P. Yogiji, Director of SPCC, for hosting the Gandhi Katha amidst this challenging time of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic to learn from Gandhiji's contribution to public health emergencies, his practices of preventive health care, wellness of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the entire humanity. I convey my warm wishes to the people of South Africa who have joined online. We stand in solidarity with you all in our common fight against the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. Today is Nelson Mandela International Day, which aims to inspire everyone by making a difference in their communities. Everyone has the ability and the responsibility to change the world for the better, according to Mahatma Gandhi. Madiba himself was inspired by Gandhiji and listening to his own words.
A man like Mahatma Gandhi, he started his political career in South Africa, and that, of course, has established his historical and emotional ties between our struggle and that of India.
Nelson Mandela was often dubbed as the Gandhi of South Africa and had strong Indian connection and striking similarities with India's father of the nation. The anti-apartheid icon shared a special bond for India, and this was there for the world to see when he chose the land of Gandhiji, whom he called his political guru and a role model, as his first destination abroad in 1990 after spending 27 years behind bars. We had an opportunity of meeting Madiba in Delhi at that time. An avowed Gandhian, Madiba always praised Gandhi for his principles of Satya and Ahimsa, for truth and non-violence, and followed his philosophy. He said, the Mahatma is an integral part of our history because it is here that he first experimented with truth. Here that he demonstrated his characteristic firmness in pursuit of justice. Here that he developed Satyagraha as a philosophy and a method of struggle. Gandhiji is most revered for his commitment to non-violence, and the Congress movement was strongly influenced by the Gandhian philosophy. It was a philosophy that achieved the mobilization of millions of South Africans during the 1952 Defiance Campaign, which established the ANC as a mass-based organization. The Indians influenced our struggle here, and especially a man like Mahatma Gandhi, so we respect them and honor them. His work on apartheid closely parallels the freedom movement of Gandhi. In a world that has constantly engaged itself into more violence, as years went by, both Gandhiji and Mandela opted for the path of non-violent political struggle. He admitted being inspired by Gandhiji, as he called Gandhiji as his role model. Gandhiji and Mandela were imprisoned a number of times in their political career. However, The most striking part is that both of them spent time in the Fort Prison in the Constitutional Hill in Johannesburg, which I had an opportunity to give a talk on the same place on the same day 6 years ago in 2014. Gandhiji started his political movement in South Africa by standing up for the underprivileged in the country, and so did Madiba. Both of them eventually became an inspiration for world peace. They inspired many nations and many leaders. Madiba, unlike Gandhi, managed to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and he had said that Gandhi's ideas had played a significant role in the transformation of South Africa. They could overcome apartheid following Gandhi's teaching, he said, and he also further quoted, and I quote, India is Gandhi's country of birth. South Africa is his country of adoption. He was both an Indian and a South African citizen. Gandhi's views on Satyagraha, ahimsa, religion, self sufficiency, and poverty applied to South Africa as it did to India, he said. The Gandhian influence dominated the freedom struggles on the African continent right up to the 1960s because of the power it generated and the unity it forged among the apparently powerless. Gandhiji himself lived in South Africa from 1893 to 1914, where he worked as a lawyer and published a newspaper called the Indian Opinion for Indians. With great foresight, Gandhiji once predicted that someone in Africa would take up his ideas, and it had to be Madiba, who famously said that you gave us Mohandas Gandhi and we returned him to you as Mahatma Gandhi. My Gandhi Katha today is dedicated to Gandhiji and Madiba. Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling. The Kathas are an Indian tradition usually with songs and narrations from the scriptures. In a way, Gandhi Katha is unique because all the Kathas in India are the stories of people who lived thousands of years ago. This is the first katha of its kind about a person who lived amongst us and in our present days. In today's Gandhi Katha, Srimati Swati Bhagat and Sri Deepak Kalra will be singing the bhajans and the dhuns. The technical support and the PowerPoint presentation are by Dr. Ravi Chopra. The lyrics of Gandhi Katha dhuns have been composed by late Sri Narayan Desai ji, who was my mentor. I am very grateful to all of them. Now, I will play a dhun in Hindi, which gives the entire philosophy of Satyagraha in South Africa, where he was determined to root out the deep roots of racial discrimination through love force, truth force, and soul force with self suffering and sacrifice to melt the hardest of the hearts of the adversaries. The Gandhi Katha dhun is रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम.
रोगी को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम. रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम. मारुति उपाय से रोगी को बचाए हम. मारुति उपाय से रोगी को बचाए हम. रोग को भंग कर रोगी को बचाए हम. रोग को भंग कर रोगी को बचाए हम. अज्ञान को शेष कर रोग को बचाए हम. अज्ञान को शेष कर रोग को बचाए हम. रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम. रोग को मिटा के चलो रोगी को बचाए हम. आपकी उपाय से रोगी को बचाए हम. आपकी उपाय से रोगी को बचाए हम.
According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it through non-violence throughout his life, till the very last breath. Gandhiji's adherence to truth, non-violence, and purity of means has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha so that people can put their hearts into understanding Gandhiji, get inspired to learn from his extraordinary moral and ethical leadership, his spiritual life, his revolutionary thoughts, actions, and his lifelong service to humanity against all forms of injustice, and how he continues to inspire people in all the parts of the globe at all times and in all ages. Last year, I visited 33 countries and gave 148 talks and Gandhi Katha. I wanted to visit South Africa also next year, but I am very happy to tell you that during the 100th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's leaving the shores of South Africa, I gave talks in the Constitutional Hill and at the Tolstoy Farm. Gandhiji always had a special corner in his heart for South Africa and kept up the connections even after returning to India till the last day. It gives me great pleasure to connect online today with the people of South Africa through the Gandhi Katha. Gandhiji used to begin and end his days with prayers. These were prayers from all the religions of the world. Gandhiji's internal core comprised of the essence of all the religions, one that he had acquired from long study and reflection. He searched these philosophies in the world religion through his intellect, but absorbed the teachings through his heart. The bhajans and hymns came to him naturally, without effort, and he saw them also as a means of reaching out to people with his philosophy. He said that ultimately all the religions point to the same truth of compassion, love, and forgiveness, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence and have friendship and respect for the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. All of Gandhiji's friends were from different religions and cultural background from around the world. One of his legacies was conflict resolution through interfaith dialogues, interreligious dialogues. We will now play the excerpts from all religious prayers or Sarvadharma Prarthana that used to take place in Gandhiji's ashram every morning and evening. This is a prayer for the well being, for healing, for becoming holy, and for the safety and health of humanity during these challenging times of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, as we are all reeling under this existential crisis. Please join me in the all religious prayers.
ईशास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्याजगत् तेन त्यक्तेन पुञ्जीथाः मा बृहत् कस्य गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Mahatma Gandhi had said that the key to good health is prayer, nature cure, nutritious food, clean water, fresh air, physical and mental exercise, amongst other things. In short, during and after the pandemic, we need to invest heavily in simple life of voluntary self-control and reduction of wants and taking preventive measures for self-care and nurture the not so sick. Simultaneously, we can see that there are three situations which are very difficult, which are happening right now. The first is the pandemic of coronavirus COVID-19, which is causing immense physical and mental stress. The second is the financial crisis, fear of death, causing physical and mental anguish. And the third is anxiety and panic that's causing all of these stress. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected. And as soon the community gets affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people of on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family, whether we choose it or not. The current coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. Gandhiji used to remain positive under all circumstances, and that was his main trait. He had faced many challenges in his life. I think as the world is reeling under the impact of COVID 19 and everyone is affected, it is important to face it humbly with reverence to the virus, gratitude and surrender to the divine forces which are beyond our control, fearlessly, intelligently, and with a positive outlook towards life. The more positive we, the ordinary people, will remain, the sooner we'll be able to take this situation in an auspicious direction. For Gandhiji, this was his way of life. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was nothing to be but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards and find inspiration through self introspection, self examination, and self purification. In the words of the Indian scripture Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he mastered the knowledge of truth through humble homage, service, and repeated questioning. And that question has been asked since the past 5,000 years in our Indian civilization. And the question is, Ko Aham, who am I? What am I? And what is the purpose of my life? The answer came to Gandhiji that the purpose of life undoubtedly is to know oneself or self realization or Atmagyan. We cannot do it unless we learn to identify ourselves with all that lives. The sum total of life, that life is God. Hence, the necessity of realizing God living within every one of us. The instrument of this knowledge is boundless, selfless service, or in other words, the purpose of life is to serve others. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Gandhiji. He said, Truth is God, Satya hi Parmeshwar hai. Faith in truth led Gandhiji to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of goodness, of truth, and being good to others. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily. Because of this understanding of oneness, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle any scores with anyone, and didn't, or nor did he want to take revenge from anyone. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect to everyone. He respected individuals as individuals without attaching any labels, and that was one more trait that we see in Gandhiji. During the Gandhi Katha, I will tell more of his traits, and if anyone hears them carefully, understands them, and puts them into practice, he or she will benefit immensely. Mahatma Gandhi's message to the world on the vital question of health and well being is very important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up Gandhiji's life. His message was simple and easy to follow. He encouraged every Indian to respect simplicity, voluntary self control, reduce the wants, follow the Indian tradition and cultural practices, the values taught by the Indian ancestors through yoga, Ayurveda, his environmental credo, nature cure for living in harmony with nature. His attire represented his message to lead a simple life of voluntary poverty. His teachings included instructions on manner of dress, personal health and hygiene habits, vegetarian diet, values, and making choices that reflect the nation's true spirit. In these times of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, which has engulfed the entire world, and as all of us are affected one way or the other, it is time to learn from Gandhiji's life, who had said, My life is my message. And that message we will now play in the form of a Gandhi Kathathon, to, which is Aankhein Pavitra Rakh, Satya Hi Tu Bol.
आँखें आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल.
Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies and service of humanity during such difficult times. Gandhiji wanted to become a doctor from a very young age. His inner calling or Swadharma, according to the Bhagavad Gita, was to serve others. So Gandhiji dedicated his life to serving the entire humanity, but it started by serving his father and mother in his childhood in India. In 1896, Barrister M.K. Gandhi took training in nursing in Cottage Hospital in South Africa, where he volunteered in taking care of patients. In 1897, he nursed and cared for a native leprosy patient who had come to seek help, and with the help of his friend Parsi Rustamji, set up a hospital in Durban, and that he continued to do in India also. And one of the constructive programs is eradication of leprosy. During the Second Anglo-Boer War from 1899 to 1902 and in the Zulu uprising of 1906, he, along with 300 free Indians and 800 Girmitias, served as stretcher bearers by establishing the Natal Indian Ambulance Corps. In the bubonic plague outbreak in Johannesburg in 1904, he and Kasturba Gandhi not only rushed to help the Girmitias who were living in the Kuli location under very unhygienic and unsanitary conditions, but also quarantined the patients in an empty godown along with his friends and treated them through nature cure. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi, along with the family, returned to India in 1915 at the age of 45. In the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as the quarantine center, treated and served patients through nature cure, gave them simple diet to boost immunity and maintain physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients by counseling them to maintain physical, mental, and spiritual well being and gave them full and correct information on maintaining social distance, keeping up with prayers by being positive and taking care of each other during this very destructive pandemic of the last century. On 10th November 1918, Gandhiji had said, our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them even in our present broken state of health. And that way is the way of self restraint, sanyam, or by imposing a limit on our acts, desires, and wants. Gandhiji used to call himself the commander in chief of the non-violent army and always used to be the first one as a frontline worker in any public emergency and serve people in all the potentially dangerous situations. This was another of his traits. One more trait was that he used to treat all work as God given work and worked with an attitude of yajna or selfless sacrifice. Arnold Joseph Toynbee, the British leading historian and philosopher of history, famously said, and I quote, "The generation into which I happen to have been born has not only been Hitler's generation in the West and Stalin's in Russia, it has also been Gandhi's in India, and it can already be forecast with some confidence that Gandhi's effect on human history is going to be greater and more lasting than Stalin's or Hitler's." I will play the Gandhi Katha Don in Hindi about Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, purity of means that combine together in the form of Satyagraha, and the dhun is Lagire Lagan, Satya Ahimsa mein man mera magan. Gandhiji was very interested in health and wellness and remained ever vigilant about his own health as well as the health and well-being of others. He said that our lifestyle should be such that it should not let any disease come anywhere near us, and every person is responsible for looking after his body, mind, and spirit impeccably. Gandhiji extended his inner calling of living a healthy and moral life in harmony with nature to nature cure, and maintained that health and wellness means one should keep the body healthy without any disease and must carry on the day's routine without getting tired. He also said that we must have perfect understanding of our bodies, and everyone must understand that our body is made up of the five elements that are found in nature, and that is what has been told to us by our ancient seers and sages of India. And these five elements are air, water, fire, earth, and space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements are very necessary. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. There is a Sanskrit saying, which proverb, which says, "Yatha pinde tatha brahmande." You are the universe within the universe. As with the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you is what is going on in the universe. From the mind-body perspective, Gandhiji's standpoint was that health is an optimal integration of body, mind, spirit, soul, and environment. Environment is our extended body. So there is a nice Vedic expression which says, "As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the universal body, so is the cosmic body. As is the universal mind, so is the cosmic mind." Yoga and meditation integrates all these components of health, and Gandhiji was a strong believer in Ayurveda, nature cure, Ashtanga yoga as well. His experiments with nature cure were always first on himself. He also advised his friends and disciples to follow these remedies and treated and cured 30,000 patients through nature cure. He had immense faith in prayer, meditation, Ramanama, nature cure, Swadeshi, Swachhata, Swavalamban, Seva, and Sarvodaya. He spoke out from his personal experience and often quoted a Tamil saying that always remained in his memory, and it means God is the help of the helpless. For the benefit of the Indian readers of the Indian opinion in South Africa, in or about the year 1906, Gandhiji wrote a few articles under the heading Guide to Health. He was constantly experimenting with his health through nature cure and diet. An English translation also appeared, and this was something based on his own experiment. So in 1942, when Gandhiji was imprisoned in Aga Khan Palace jail, when he was leading the Quit India movement, he wrote another book. And on 27th August 1942, he wrote in the preface that the book was translated into several Indian languages. An English translation also appeared. This reached the West, and it was translated in several European languages. The result was that the book became the most popular of all my writings, he said. I have never been able to understand the reason for this popularity. I had written those articles casually, and I did not attach much importance to them. But perhaps the reason for the popularity is to be sought in the fact that I have looked upon the problem of health from a novel point of view, somewhat different from the orthodox methods adopted by doctors and Vaidyas, the traditional health practitioners. I am giving a new name, he said. It is called Key to Health. Anyone who observes the rule of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or Vaidyas from day to day. William James Will Durant, the American writer, historian, and philosopher, best known for his writing The Story of Civilization, spoke some very inspirational words about Gandhiji, and I quote, "Not since Buddha has India so revered any man. Not since Saint Francis of Assisi has any life known to history been so marked by gentleness, disinterestedness, simplicity of soul, and forgiveness of enemies. We have the astonishing phenomenon of a revolution led by a saint. Gandhiji established 4 ashrams in his lifetime, 2 in South Africa called Phoenix Settlement in 1904 and Tolstoy Farm in 1910, and 2 ashrams in India. Some of you must have visited the Sabarmati ashram in Ahmedabad, in Gujarat, which Gandhiji had established on 17th June 1917, and the Sevagram ashram, where Kasturba Gandhi and Gandhiji lived in poverty like the common villagers of India from 1936 onwards. This was his ideal or his idea of a non-violent face-to-face society for Sarvodaya or welfare of all through the constructive programs, which is his second gift to humanity, the first gift being Satyagraha. I am very happy to inform you that I was born in the last ashram in Sevagram, where my father, who was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood and had joined the non-violent freedom struggle in India, lived along with my mother. Even after Gandhiji passed on in 1948, for more than 5 decades, my father and mother and all of us continue to walk on the path that Gandhiji has shown to humanity. So, what I'm telling you all today is based on what my father had told me, my own experience and understanding of Gandhiji, who has inspired a generation of people who have followed his path and continue to do so even today. In the ashram prayers in the morning and evening, the first verse from each Upanishad, the scriptural text or Upanishad from India, used to be recited. ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा ma gridha kasya svidhanam, that everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing belongs to you. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non-attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice to the extent that is necessary for you, and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to you. So now listen in to a Gandhi Katha Dhun describing the same sentiments, which is Naya Tera, Naya Mera, Ishwar Kaya Raj. Ashram life was a life of strict routine from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was a simple life of voluntary self control, punctuality, discipline, promptness, minimalistic living, living in harmony with nature, following the environmental credo of Gandhiji of minimum use of resources, recycling, reusing, reducing, and refusing, treating oneself through nature cure, having simple vegetarian diet, caring and sharing, being ever vigilant, walking, daily morning and evening prayers, daily practices of cleanliness, sanitation and hygiene, spinning and weaving, bread labor, disciplined life, constructive programs, and using every minute of time in the service of humanity. Time is the only non renewable resource that all of us have if we are lucky, and we must use this time very carefully, like Gandhiji did. He is the role model of punctuality. So, that much one can learn from Gandhiji to begin with. Gandhiji's unique practices of silence, prayer, fasting, and spinning gave him the internal strength. He carried out his experiments in health and wellness through nature cure, diet control, hydrotherapy, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day. The ashram inmates not only participated but modified and validated them, and still continue to practice like I do till today. That is, points to the significance of their relevance. Gandhiji had given three gifts to humanity, and that is Satyagraha, constructive programs, and Ekadasha Vrata, or the 11 observances, about which very few people know, which were a set of rules for the ashram inmates to lead a voluntary life, a life of voluntary self control. Gandhiji had spent the first 18 years of his life in India. Mohan, who was afraid of the dark, grew up to become fearless and forgave those who assaulted him. The seeds of spirituality were sown in India, and curiosity aided his first steps. He began as a student of average intelligence and was an ordinary person like you and me who learned to search within himself and analyze the world through his intellect. This was another trait of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi went to London as a student for 3 years to study law. His consciousness expanded by reading the works of the great philosophers and poets of the West, and interacted with great reformers and thinkers. The shy, withdrawn Mohan became the secretary of the Vegetarian Society of London. He, of course, became a barrister in London, but also learnt the lessons of citizenship and understood and was inspired by Bhagavad Gita and the life of Gautama Buddha. In South Africa, where he spent close to 20 years, he did his sadhana or penance and became the advocate of the Indian community. And that path of sadhana took him to Satyagraha. He constantly experimented with himself and experimented with truth force, the Satyagraha. He became the head of two ashrams and finally led thousands of Girmitiyas through a great march or kutch in 1913. He called it the March of Satyagrahis, and at other times he described it as the peace army. But the Satyagrahis had not marched to Charlestown to establish peace. They were there because of restless disquiet. For peace, they had to search within. With the Girmitiyas and indentured miners joining the Satyagraha, this became the movement of the resourceless laborers, and the class character of the struggle also had undergone change. The 2,000 men and women with children marchers camped at the border town of Charlestown. They stayed there, and the march turned out to be much longer than earlier was estimated. Gandhiji had a problem in his mind about what to do if they come and join in large numbers. He decided to keep the marchers walking and taught them discipline by not telling them not to pluck even one leaf from the fruit-laden trees lining the path, not to retort, and if somebody slapped them, not to raise their hands, and that there should be no addiction. Gandhiji spoke in English, and someone translated that into Tamil and told that whatever Gandhi Raja had said, the Girmitiyas said they would follow his instructions. There is a description of a kitchen where Gandhiji had taken on the tough responsibility of serving food, and as more people started joining, he rationed out the proportions. On that day, Indian merchants had provided dal and rice, and khichdi was made. Gandhiji was serving with a wooden ladle in the broken, misshapen tin plates or vessels of whatever the Girmitiyas were carrying. People were standing in line. Then he described how he had to give very little to a woman because he had to ensure that there was enough food for everybody. The communication that was made between their eyes and the expression of both said so many things. The woman said, her eyes said that, "Is that all I am getting? I have walked 10 miles." But she did not utter a word. She did not know the language. But her eyes spoke. Gandhi too did not speak anything. His eyes too spoke. Both kept looking at each other. And the woman said, "Romba santosham." In Tamil, it is very happy. From this incident was sown in Gandhiji's mind the seed of faith in the Indian people. However hungry they may be, they would be willing to sacrifice their share of food so that someone else may also get a share. He spent his first 45 years of his life in 3 continents and made a great impact, which was not an ordinary incident in a century and a half ago. With every step he took, he widened his ambit of service. He began with service to his father and mother, went on to serve the vegetarian movement, and in the last phase, served the Indian community in South Africa. He set standards for people to follow. Every major point of departure was marked by a vow or a pledge. Before going to London, he took a vow before his mother that he would not touch meat, wine, or women. In the waiting room at the Pietermaritzburg station, he decided that he would suffer but not leave the country like a coward. Under the spell of John Ruskin's Unto This Last, he resolved to lead a life of bread labor. In the Empire Theatre of Johannesburg, he took an oath along with others, with God as their witness, that they would not submit to the Black Act. So, coming back to the coronavirus COVID-19, this is a global pandemic of our times, but Spanish flu remains the deadliest in modern history, killing at least 50 million people and infecting more than 500 million. The 1918 H1N1 virus played a critical role in altering the course of India's history. Just like in the case of coronavirus COVID 19, after a century in 2020, there was no known medicine available to treat the Spanish flu patients. The first flu vaccine came on the scene only in 1940. The first antibiotic medicine came in 1928, years after Spanish flu had ravaged the human population. It was physical distancing, wearing masks, and remaining in quarantine that saved the world, particularly the developed one back then. And that is what Gandhiji also advised people to do. And here is what we learned from Gandhiji during the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic also. In this crisis, people are discovering just how much control they have over their thoughts, which is very little. In a crisis, fear and anxiety start to roam the mind, and struggling against them does only a very little good, which is temporary at the best. This is why so many people turn to denial and distraction. They try to deny their fearful thoughts and turn to distractions to escape them through all kinds of things. But there is a better way. When a crisis makes you feel stressed, prayer, meditation, yoga, and nature cure relieves the stress response. Fear and anxiety are forms of stress that become exaggerated when events become uncertain, when you feel a loss of control over the situation, and when the stress keeps repeating itself without let up, the thinking mind reacts to all of these conditions. It always has been, even in normal times, but a crisis brings stress into high relief, making it very capable of lowering the immune system of our bodies and setting in inflammatory diseases. Gandhiji was the first environmentalist, and with his stunning premonition and knowledge, he had declared that the earth has enough for man's needs, but not for man's greed. Greed will be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis he had predicted almost a century ago. Gandhiji had also said that the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we had to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. Last year on 2nd October, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the United Nations Regional Office in Vienna and release the stamp brought out by the UN Postal Department with the following quote: Gandhiji comes across as the greatest wellness guru, the greatest environmentalist, the role model who comes free of cost during this time of coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic crisis and forever. We will have to learn to live with COVID 19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Gandhiji to make the necessary changes in thoughts and actions, and of course, the conduct. We need to learn from Gandhiji's spiritual life in these times of COVID 19 pandemic for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is the future that the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic is pointing out to us if we observe carefully. Many lessons are very clear, and some are still unknown, surrounding us in uncertainty. This uncertainty is causing mental stress, anxiety, existential crisis, fear of extinction and death, and the mass psychology of living in depression and grief is pointing out towards this fact. We are collectively grieving for the loss of our known lifestyle. However, at a deeper level, it is for the wellness of humans to coexist in harmony with Mother Nature within its rhythm, because our mere existence depends on that. By living with the universe, supporting the nature, by taking care of all its creations. There is no alternative to this lifestyle. Amid the shock and panic, the catastrophe of COVID 19 has prompted some radical rethinking, and people are trying to rethink their lifestyle. Here, it is already shown by Gandhiji, who had demonstrated all this merely 72 years ago. For all of us, there is no other way than the way of standard prevention and taking care of oneself and others. Community and mutual support is essential, and so is the happiness and welfare of others by having access to pure air, water, and food. If still we return to the normal standard of finding happiness by chasing after money, power, position, wealth, through a lifelong consumerism, then COVID 19 has given us the wake up call. This kind of lifestyle of empty consumerism and mass distraction has only increased the difference between the rich and poor, created the huge carbon footprint, increased the misery of the invisible poor masses. But now everything has changed. Intolerance, callousness, and indolence will not do any longer. We will have to strive for excellence within whatever is now available to us, because everyone is affected by the COVID 19 pandemic, irrespective of stature, age, and wealth. So we have to follow the lifestyle that Gandhiji had shown us. I will end with the Sanskrit shloka, which is a peace benediction for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let all be happy. Let all be healthy. Let all see and experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. I once again take this opportunity to thank the Consul General of CGI Durban and the director of SVCC for hosting the Gandhi Katha today. Now, with Gandhiji's blessings, who had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light, by listening to the Gandhi Katha Dhun Shubhamangal Ho, I would also like to extend my grateful thanks to everyone who has joined us today by sparing their time, which is the only non-renewable resource they have. You have all given me the gift of time, and I'm very, very thankful to you. So now the Gandhi Katha Dhun, Gandhiji's blessings, Shubha Mangal Ho.